Welcome back to our 5-part anxiety series. This is part 3. If you haven't had the chance to watch parts 1 and 2, we encourage you to go back because there are connections between each one to help you in managing anxiety, especially during this uncertain time. Today we're going to talk about how we can pay more attention to and be curious and lean into these anxiety moments that are coming to us. If we look at the frequency, intensity, and duration of our thoughts, we can recognize that they actually feed the anxiety. For instance, if we were to think about a thought such as, I don't know that I'll get this task done today, maybe we can pay attention to how often we're telling ourselves that, the intensity of the stress it causes by noticing in our bodies what we're feeling, and also emotionally what it's causing us, maybe in our behaviors as well. Perhaps we're starting to raise our voice or we're just getting frustrated easily. And we can also notice how long those thoughts last, whether it's a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. This will give us some information and recognize how much all of these things and factors can feed our anxiety. We can also notice how our brain operates. This is a very bare bones explanation, but if we look and think about our amygdala, which is our threat system, it evaluates threats that are coming to us that can often involve our anxious thoughts. Our response may be fight, flight, or freeze. The amygdala is essentially experience-based, and it can actually be activated even further by lack of sleep, lack of exercise, not taking care of ourselves. If we start to shift some of these threats by paying attention to what's causing the anxiety and how long we're staying in it, we can then actually start to move and experience the thoughts through our prefrontal cortex, which is more emotion-based. It actually neutralizes the anxiety, which is why we encourage you to think about the emotion that the anxiety elicits, the physical response, and eventually we're going to access a preferred response that will be less harmful to us. When we consider how anxiety is affecting us, where are we living in terms of channels? You have many channels on your television. Are you living on the anxiety channel? If so, is changing the channel accessible so that you can actually start to build the capacity to stand up to the anxious thoughts? So being curious about what you're doing, how you're contributing to the problem and maintaining the anxiety is really important. You may also notice triggers, things that will trigger anxiety, such as having too many tasks to do in one day. Maybe you try to manage that list in a way that you aren't feeling too much stress. Some questions that I have for you is whether or not you can step back and recognize if there's a signal of the anxiety creeping in. For instance, the list that's too long. We know we can't possibly check off all of those to-dos in one day. So can we park that for a little bit and recognize what we can do in one day? Another anxious signal may be sitting in traffic. Thankfully, we don't have to battle that as much right now. But that may be giving us anxiety. So maybe we want to access something like deep breathing to help us in those moments. And can we separate the symptom of the anxiety from the context? So are we able to look at the fact that we're at a traffic light, there's lots of traffic ahead of us? That's our context. Our symptom is something that is coming from within and how we want to manage it. So there are two different factors that we can look at, as well as the noise. Sometimes there's noise in our head, just like not unlike beeping of cars and lots of noise as we're battling through traffic. But sometimes there's a signal. It may be an emotional signal, such as I'm running late, or I just want to get out of this traffic situation. If we can separate the noise of the traffic and the signal, which may be that you just really need to get somewhere, or you're just done for the day and you want to get home. If we can separate those two things, we can recognize that there's factors that cause some anxiety and that there is noise that builds it, such as our thoughts, our thoughts that will tell us that we need to worry about this. We need to be concerned about not getting somewhere on time. Perhaps the solution would be to let that person know that you're not going to make it on time. Any way we can help manage anxiety is going to be very important, especially during COVID when we don't know what lies ahead. Managing in that moment is sometimes the most important thing. But we may also need to be willing to experience distress that change will bring up to us. So change can be tough and it can give us stress. How might we want to change our to-do list, for example? Could we prioritize the things that we need to do right now and park the things for another day that don't necessarily need to be done in this moment? That takes a lot of thought, but it will help create some change and some shift in how we create things, and recognizing that we're human and we can only do so much. As we recognize the harm that anxiety causes, for instance, it can drain our energy, it can cause us to have a short fuse with people, it can cause us to lack joy in our day. There's all kinds of ways that we can notice the harm that it causes. Can we potentially access a preferred response? If we're noticing the emotional factor, which is feeling frustrated, for example, and then we're noticing physically, possibly it's pain in your chest, eventually we can potentially access a preferred response, such as managing what we can do in one day and recognizing that we're human. We all have the capacity to shift our brain's response. We all have the ability to stand up to that amygdala signals and threat response by operating out of our emotions. It's something that most of us have only learned intellectually to do, but this series is meant to help you on your journey to managing stress and anxiety. We hope this has been helpful. Don't hesitate to check out our social media channels for more information and for ongoing resources. Hope you have a stressless day.